The video that you are about to watch is an excerpt of the original. After my long efforts in dealing with YouTube's copyright management system, I had to give up. I haven't given up my projects though. And while we cannot publish the entire video here due to the imminent danger of having the channel closed down, you can still enjoy excerpts which we've carefully chosen in order to make this video meaningful, fun, and educational. If you want to watch the complete video, including the sound of the music from the original recording, as well as special edition videos which will never be published here on YouTube due to the same copyright issues, and the Beatles 150 series, as well as other series and courses, you're welcome to visit my Ko-fi or Patreon page. I hope you enjoy this video. Hi everyone! Number 29 in the Beatles 150 series, and Vlad just told me that we're getting close to the end of A Hard Day's Night, so I don't know if we have 1, 2, 3 more, but I don't expect a whole lot more before we move to a new album. So this one, you can't do that. You can't do that. Can't do what? I guess I'll find out. Let's see what there is to read about it. According to the official Beatles website, the genre of this piece of music is rock. Rock, plain and simple. Not rock beat, not rock folk, not rock blues, not... Anyway, just rock. One of many musical details the Beatles spearheaded was the use of what we can call the two-measure guitar riff. That was the Beatles' job? Okay. This riff, which encapsulates guitar rock throughout the generations, was first popularized by the Beatles in the song You Can't Do That. The riff usually appears at the beginning of the song, played only by the guitar, after which the rest of the band kicks in to play the remainder. The riff then becomes the most prominent, identifiable feature of the song as it is repeated throughout or in strategic places of the song. Well, you know, this whole idea of a riff has been a bit of a tricky thing for me to nail down, because sometimes I think, oh, that's a riff. Is it really? What's the difference between a riff, an ostinato, a theme? How does it fit in with my musical education and understanding? A riff is something of its own doing, I guess, but it has similarities with other things that I'm familiar with. So it's been kind of a challenge for me to really say that is a riff. I'm getting closer, but this is, I suppose, a very educational moment for me, because if the Beatles are the one who kind of established at least the two-measure riff, well, and if this is the song which did it, I ought to listen. Other 60s artists were quick to pick up on this trend, such as the Rolling Stones in Satisfaction. Okay, I have listened to that one. Both John and Paul have acknowledged in interviews that You Can't Do That was entirely a Lennon composition. When asked during a 1964 interview which Beatles song George Harrison liked most, he unhesitatingly proclaimed, "I like You Can't Do That personally." Well, now I'm curious. So, let's see what it sounds like. Jealous much? Well, this is kind of different from the others in a way. I guess it feels a bit rockier. It's almost clunky. And the way I've noticed as we're progressing through this, they really enjoy, or perhaps I should say Lennon really enjoys, this clash of harmonies between a chord and maybe what we could call a blues third or a blues seventh. It's the minor seventh, and the major minor third relationship. I've commented on that fairly often in this series so far. But here's another song where I feel like it's really becoming a signature of theirs. And they exploit it in a really interesting way. It almost feels modal somehow. Even though we don't really call it a mode, there's something kind of different about the way it comes across. Okay, let's go back and listen to the whole thing again. And so this is the riff that I read about and that I want to pay attention to for a moment. It is kind of like, well, okay, I've talked about this a lot before. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it is kind of like a theme in that it's a musical statement of something. There's a bit of melodic element, there's a bit of rhythmic element mixed in. But this is what I've learned with rock music. A lot of rock music. Not all, but a lot. Very often these musical statements, bum da 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 dum bum 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 ba da da dum bum, rather than be kind of developed, meaning we take that and maybe take it somewhere else and do something else with it, play with it, see what we can explore musically within and through it. Instead, it becomes kind of I could say a label, a brand, a sticker for the song, where you just place it. It's an identifying element. And like you do with a brand, when you're advertising, you put it in people's faces. You make it show up in many different places throughout. So it becomes the identifying element of the entire piece of music. I guess that's how I would describe a riff at this point in my musical experience, is that it has musical content. It's not just an ostinato pattern, although I suppose it could be, but doesn't have to be. It can have melodic elements, harmonic elements, but whatever it has, it pretty much stays that way and is its own identity. Not only that, it is the identifying marker that gives the piece its brand recognition. Curious what you have to say about that, but that's my thinking. And this one, right off the bat, they're playing again with this major minor business. Bum ba dum da dum bum bum. We're in the key of G major, and immediately we start with a G minor interval. G to A sharp, B flat, whatever you want to call it. But we're really sitting in G major, and this is primarily a G chord through here. And then we're thrown back to this minor third again. And so packed into this 2-bar riff, this 2-bar musical statement, we already have a lot of tension built up. And it starts with this clash and it ends with this clash. Everything is kind of sandwiched between this unsettling, indecisive, but very decisively stated framework. And it is so easy to pick up with your ears that as it comes throughout the piece, we hear it as the marker, the identifier of the entire song. And as I said, look here, already, as the verse begins, I got something to say that might cause you We have another of the minor sevens, the flat sevens. I'm not going to dwell on this a lot in this song because I have spent so much time on it in other songs. And I feel like at this point, it doesn't really surprise me. It's more of interest to me because, as I've said along the way, I'm curious to see how their compositional sense developed, how their strategies and techniques developed, and what markers of their style did they take into their later music, which I have not yet heard. But I'm going to be very curious to see how something like this, which it seems so pervasive in their early works, how did they handle it in the later stuff? So I'll kind of lay that to rest here in this song because I don't want to belabor the point, but it is one of the first things I noticed when I started listening to this a moment ago. The other thing that is interesting to me here is that, some of their songs, I have said, have this very nice arch to the melody, or they're very singable, they carry along. This one strikes me as really quite difficult to sing if you've heard it just once or twice. If I were to hear it once or twice, I'd be kind of reluctant to try to sing it, at least on my own. I could follow along, but there are so many of these micro differences pitch-wise and surprising little turns and not a clear shape that the melody predictably follows. It kind of jumps around. It kind of lands in awkward places without warning. I guess I'm a bit impressed that Lennon could sing this comfortably. Well, who knows how many times he practiced it. And of course, he's the one who came up with the tune, right? So he ought to be able to sing it. But still, to be able to keep track of all of those, I don't know how much time they spent practicing this. Did he just throw it out quickly? And as I said, it has this modal, even perhaps we could say bi-modal, because of the major-minor contrasts and differences. You could almost say that there are two different modes or two different keys, two different scale forms being set, one on top of the other. And sometimes one is dominant, sometimes the other is dominant. And how do we find our way through this maze of, can I say complex, harmonic complexity? Even though the underlying harmonies are incredibly simple. We have a lot of simply G chords going to D7 chords. And is it a major 7 or a minor 7? Sometimes one or the other, but not a lot of adventure in the accompanying harmonies. The adventure is on what weaves around and is set with those harmonies. And one of the things that many of you have said to me is that their later music gets so harmonically complex. And so this song is kind of an example of harmonic complexity in a very unassuming garb. If you're just going through and analyzing the chords, you might miss how much is woven in here. But if you sit and use your ears and try to think, how did he come up with that? It's almost as if he had two different scales going in his mind and he was jumping from one to the other. At least that's how it feels to me. And Lennon's singing voice. This is kind of along the same lines of the previous one I did. Well, he's not shouting here quite so much, but there's something very heavy in his voice. Kind of, even the way he's pronouncing, enunciating each syllable. There's something pedantic about it, kind of formal, stiff, square, which matches the lyrics very well. The theme, this whole idea of, I think it's a sin. I've told you before. If you do this, I'm going to do this. It's this finger shaking, kind of jealous, but it's a jealousy that comes from a very rigid mindset. And at least as it's expressed in this song. And the way he sings adds to that feeling of this is a very rigid, closed-minded individual speaking and communicating to his girl. There's no room to understand the picture. Is this just a friend? Is this... it doesn't really sound like it's a lover. She was just talking to him twice. Just talking. Come on. Schoolboy, grow up. But no, I think it's a sin. If you so much as have a conversation with another boy in passing, that's cheating in my book. And my book is what matters. And you have to do it my way. Or you could just hear it in his voice. And he does such a great job of communicating this attitude and this rigidity. I've told you before, boom, 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 boom. And I said a little bit ago that I think this has kind of a clunky feel to it. It almost feels like they sat down with some pots and pans and tin cans to there's something kind of unpolished and unfinished feeling about the way the sound is in this song. But still, we have the perfect timing of something like because I told you before. And the slide up, everybody's green. That also is a harmonic tension moment where I don't know if I've noticed the Beatles using this before, where you have this long sustained note and then it escapes by just sliding upward. Green. And it's used twice in a row. So it's kind of, again, something that is building some tension and stress in this whole dynamic, and we feel the pressure in the relationship that's being sung about. Because I've told you before. This is not the first time. I've only caught you doing this twice, but I have told you before. You can't do that. It's so juvenile and it's so hyper-controlling, possessive. Really, it's too much. It's too much. Now, I'm beginning to understand that Lennon has kind of used his own insecurities as inspiration for this music, and the little commentary on this project so far, and the things I've read. I understand he had some relationship challenges, insecurities, and things like that. So he's doing a brilliant job of tapping into his own personal challenges and perhaps magnifying it, perhaps, of course, I don't know if he was really so pedantic and possessive and control freak as this, but whether or not he was, he used whatever his own experiences were to create this incredibly disturbingly direct expression of this kind of relationship, which, okay, young people get into these things. Young people have to learn how to balance their affections and their attachments, and some do better than others, and some never learn. But this is no longer a happy love song. This is dealing with some real meaty, gritty relationship dysfunction. And he does it by painting this picture, by showing us what this looks like and how ridiculous it looks like, how disturbing it is, just through singing a song in the first person. And he doesn't have to tell us anything is wrong. We just feel that it's wrong. And we feel it so strongly. This is really great artistic communication of a message, of a scenario. And it allows us to draw our own conclusions without being told what they should be. But we certainly see clearly what conclusion needs to be drawn. Oh, you can't do that. This thought just crossed my mind. I don't know how many of you watching this are non-English speakers. Everybody's green. What do we mean by green? Well, in English we have this phrase, and actually I don't hear it used so much anymore. When is the last time you heard somebody say, he's green? He's green with envy. But it's a phrase. It's an idiom of speech. And he's not using the entire expression. He's green with envy. He's just saying everybody's green, and we're all supposed to know what that means. Green is also sometimes used to mean feeling sick, like motion sick or something. So, and that's how you hear it used more often these days. Just wanted to make sure that's clear for if anyone has any questions. Why is everybody green? That's why. Oh yes, this moment caught me. I guess it's the first time I've really noticed Lennon singing, going towards the really rough style blues rock voice, where it gets a little bit of a growl in his voice. And when he says, out of my mind, that's where I really notice it for the first time in this song. So I guess there are several firsts stylistically here. And it even ends with this slide. So many colorful and powerful, musical, expressive devices and moments in this song. So now I'm thinking, out of all the Beatles songs, why did George Harrison, well, I guess he was asked that in 1964. So that was the year this was released. So he didn't have all the later Beatles songs to think about as well. But in that year, he identified this song as his top favorite. We've heard nice songs, innovative songs, creative songs, exploratory songs, all kinds of different moods and styles up to this point. Why did George Harrison identify this song out of all of them as being his top favorite of the time? Well, unfortunately, he's not with us anymore, so I can't ask him directly, but I have a guess. My guess is that it feels very meaty. It feels like you can kind of sink your teeth in and really dig a bit deeper into some of the dark emotions and play with that a bit. It's kind of like if you ever hear an actor talking about their favorite moments in a movie project, they often talk about how they really love the really intense moments where they could really have a disagreement scene or a dark scene, a dirty scene, and because there's something incredibly challenging and that makes us really dig into the depths of who we are and find a way to express that and put it out. And I guess this is what I hear in this song is that the Beatles are digging a bit deeper, going a bit darker, tackling something a little bit rougher, and it's not just Lennon blowing off steam and voicing bitterness and frustration. This is the entire group really giving this rougher sound. And just as it's incredibly satisfying to sink your teeth into a really crunchy apple and bite hard and deep, so also it's really satisfying to tackle a subject like this and really dig into it and to feel like you're going a bit deeper than just the surface, superficial, play, fun expressions. That's my guess. I don't know if that's true, but there is something satisfying in this song for that reason. Well, I guess I'll see you soon.